Welcome to the highlights of round 6 of Legends of Chess. Well, for the fans of Anand, it was the same old story. Sixth round and his sixth defeat. But this wasn't so surprising because he was up against a man who was in top form, Ian Nepomniachtchi from Russia. This young Turk, known for his speed chess, plays at an amazing speed. I mean, this was reminiscent of the way Anand used to play a few decades ago. So Anand met his match once again. This time it was the young Russian, but Anand did win a game after he lost the second game. Second game was a little difficult for him because he erred very early. Around the 12th or the 13th move, he faltered and lost in about 34 moves. And then in game 4, where Nepomniachtchi needed just a draw with white pieces, and everybody had almost expected that to be the end of the match, Anand staged a comeback. And the moment Nepomniachtchi erred on the 14th move, there was Anand. He lashed onto it and eventually won in 41 to force the Armageddon game. In the Armageddon game, what happened was that Anand, as we all know, wasn't fast enough. And eventually, of course, he blundered a piece and lost. But by that time, it was almost lost for him because he had only 6 seconds of time left on his clock when he made that last error. And Nepomniachtchi had more than a minute. So that virtually summed up Viswanathan Anand's game yesterday. He struggled. He was solid off the blocks in game 1, yes, but in game 2, that error, it was something which wasn't like a mistake, which was like a one move kind of an error. It was like he made this move and then his position just deteriorated from there on. He couldn't quite save the position. Similarly, in game 4, Nepomniachtchi made a certain mistake, which was, I think he misread the opening completely, and I won't say that he underestimated Anand, but he mishandled it, and thereafter, of course, Anand was all over him. The way he played, the way he got his pieces in that harmony, it was a vintage Anand when you see him at work. So that was the saving grace of the day for Anand. So he did gain a point, and for the third successive day, he was locked at 2-2, and then finally the tie-break game is where he's not able to find his way through that particular game. So that is one thing where Anand will have to work a little harder, because this particular format is here to stay, and Anand will have to work a little harder if he has to match the young Turks in the game. Let's talk about the man who is firmly at the top. He's now a point ahead of his fellow joint leader, the fellow overnight joint leader, Nepomniachtchi, and that's Magnus Carlsen. Now, Magnus Carlsen, for yesterday, there was an exception made for him. His game started 4 hours earlier. Normally, it starts at India time 7:30. His game against Ding Liren was slotted at 3:30. Now, the reason was that is Carlsen, who is also a football lover, we all know that. So yesterday was the last day of the Premier League, and in the Fantasy Premier League, if you see, there are more than 7 million players taking part in that, and Magnus Carlsen was 4th in the standings. He was 12 points off the leader. Now he was very keen to just go and watch the last day's match when all the teams are involved. The world's richest chess player is actually focusing on this. I mean, he's in the middle of a tournament, but then he still manages to convince the organizers that, look, I need to watch a lot of football. So and of course, Ding Liren has been very sweet, and something that Magnus Carlsen also acknowledged, that he thanked Ding for actually advancing the game and letting him go and watch his football. So, but what did Magnus Carlsen do to Ding? I mean, he just destroyed him in 4 games. Of course, he won a game early and then drew, comfortably. So all through, if you see, except one game where Ding Liren actually challenged Magnus Carlsen a bit. Otherwise, these 4 games were quite simple. Magnus was hardly in any trouble. So he just finished his job and then he rushed to watch football. The day was also about 3 Russians. Nepomniachtchi, of course, the man who beat Anand. Besides that, it was also about two seasoned Russians, Vladimir Kramnik and Peter Svidler. Interestingly, all three Russians on view needed tie-break games today. Armageddon was something which all three faced with a certain amount of comfort, and it showed. And they all won, as I said. And the best part was that this, of course, is a tribute to the Russian school of chess, because if you look at the range of these players, they belong to two different generations, and look at the way they are handling the challenges of modern day chess, and they all are very well equipped to handle the shortest version of the game, which is 5 minutes versus 4, and they all look pretty solid. And that work ethics, or whatever the training you call, that is showing in this result, in this particular tournament. And these results have helped them occupy, these three are occupying the top 5 spots already in the company of Magnus Carlsen and Anish Giri. And since they won yesterday, they're showing great form, of course, but at the same time, you also have to see that they have virtually ended the prospects of the remaining 5 players in the field to break it into the top 5, because I don't see anybody other than these 5, the 3 Russians, Magnus Carlsen and Anish Giri, occupying the top 4 spots, because the gap between these 5 and the rest, because the next best happens to be Boris Gelfand, and there's this little gap, and the way Gelfand is playing, of course he started off well, I don't see him breaking into the top 4. So let's just look at what Kramnik did against Boris Gelfand. Of course he lost the first game, looked in trouble, and but then he just regrouped, he just collected himself. And then what we saw was something absolutely brilliant. He produced a series of moves and maneuvers where Gelfand was most uncomfortable. He somehow couldn't get out of it, but he just did well enough to take the match into the Armageddon. And thereafter, of course, he ran out of magic. And then, of course, it was Kramnik who showed the kind of stuff that he's made of. Similarly, Svidler, I think Svidler, to my mind, yesterday he produced the game of the day. The way he beat Ivanchuk after losing the first game. Again, he immediately leveled the match score by winning the second. Went on to draw the next 2 rather comfortably. Ivanchuk, of course, keeps trying new things, but Svidler knew what had to be done. But in the Armageddon, I think what Svidler did was something magical. He just completely outfoxed his rival. He's a seasoned campaigner, Ivanchuk, but he just couldn't find a way through. And thereafter, of course, Svidler's magic prevailed, and that is probably one of the reasons why I say that at the start I've said that Svidler is one of those guys who was, to my mind, the dark horse among these 6 legendary names, because he is one player who's been commentating on the Magnus Carlsen tour, and he sees every single game. He has his views, he analyzes every single game. Now that in turn has helped him come prepared for this kind of tournament. Of course, anybody winning the Russian championship 8 times cannot be taken lightly, and so far he has done very well. So he was there in the kind of form that we all know what he's capable of. He was last yesterday, he remains there after his 6th successive loss. And keeping him company there was Ding Liren. Again, he has also lost his matches except one. But if you look at the aggregate points scored, Anand is 1 point ahead of Ding. But that is a very small consolation, because match points are something that matters, and Anand is yet to score a match point. Going forward, now Anand will meet 3 players in the remaining 3 rounds. And these 3 players are Boris Gelfand, Ding Liren, and Ivanchuk. Now, all three have struggled in varying degrees. Of course, of the three, Gelfand started quite well, but thereafter he has not been able to maintain his consistency. And Ding and Anand, of course, we know that they are at the rock bottom. And Ivanchuk, unpredictable as ever, the man who took a point off the world number one and the world champion. He's capable of anything. I mean, he can win by a mile, he can lose by a mile either. So it'll be tough to predict, but let's hope that Anand gets his act right for once, because the law of as I say, the law of averages, that anybody who believes in it knows that heavily favors Viswanathan Anand. Anand has to come good at some point, and the best time to come good is now.